spaceships. We've seen hundreds of them. Some real, but mostly Hollywood concepts. I've been asked, what makes you think you can draw one better than what's already been done? My answer? Nothing. Who cares? Let's draw one anyway, see where it takes us. I'm Brian, welcome to Draw It With Me. For our spaceship, I'm using 0.5 and 0.9mm mechanical pencils on Bristol Paper Smooth, and then we'll be coloring it digitally on the computer using Photoshop. Step 1. Sketch rough, abstract shapes resembling the overall form of the craft. In the spirit of John Berkey, one of the greatest science fiction artists, we'll use a basic triangular shape design for the hull of the ship, separating it into elegant shapes and streamlined sections. The large rear engine area will give the ship power and speed, while the wedge-shaped front will make it aggressive. This will be an enemy ship designed to track and hunt our protagonists. Step 2. Roughly tack on wings, fins, engines, and tech. Your spaceship doesn't necessarily need to look like any you've seen before. Between Star Wars, Star Trek, and 100 other sci-fi movies we've watched, we've been exposed to a lot of different designs. Some resemble fighter jets or submarines, guns and other weaponry, or even sea creatures. Just use your imagination, or the requirements from the story you're trying to tell when laying down the rough sketch. Why didn't the astronauts stay on the moon? It was full. Step 3. Redraw your sketch, refining lines and planes. Since the ship's design consists mostly of straight lines, feel free to use a ruler or triangle as a straight edge guide. I'm going for a looser, more painterly look when finished, so I'll be freehanding it. We've got a slight perspective going on here, but not drastic enough to employ 1, 2, or 3-point perspective guidelines. We'll be covering perspective in another future video. For all intents and purposes here, it's okay to overshoot your line work. We're just practicing a rough or concept approach to the spaceship's design, like a comp or a thumbnail, but taken a few steps further. Step 4. Shade the darker areas or innards of the ship, and begin blending. Now is a good time to begin the shading process. Try to see the shadows as sharp, defined shapes and design elements rather than blended tone. This is where a spaceship differs slightly from a portrait, unless you're doing a portrait of a robot with a paneled face. I'm also starting to add a bit of detail between the panels to give the ship texture, weight, and make it seem large. What did the alien say to the garden? Take me to your weeder. Step 5. Add further detail and darken overall tones. Double check your line work for details and perspective. Draw additional lines as necessary to clarify the design. I tend to favor the industrial or frigate-looking ship designs, but also the flair of streamlined body sections, like an alien sports car.
Call this one the CMOF Cruiser. Not sure what CMOF stands for yet, but I'll come up with something.
The juxtaposition of simplicity with complexity gives it a slick, futuristic look. Stay tuned after the intermission and we'll paint this bad boy. Step 6. Drop your isolated sketch over a roughed out background and fill with a dark tone. In this case, I'm using a bluish gray. The light source will be determined by your background. As seen here, our light will be coming from behind the ship over the world's horizon. So as we shade, we'll be backlighting the ship. Step 7. Add soft highlights and shadows to define the ship's form and light source. How do you debunk an alien? By throwing them off the bed. With our CMOF Cruiser here, I'm going to try and paint with cool highlights and warm shadows using a primary color palette: blues, reds, and yellows. Keep moving around the painting, adding tones and emphasizing the shadows. Make sure the values are consistent with the light direction so the form reads clearly. Step 8. Push your colors and edges, blending your ship to the background. primary brush I'll be using is a dry brush to mimic the look of oil paintings. But I'm also using a speckled brush, a basic soft edge brush, and a hard edge one for detail work. With your lights and darks, remember that the negative shapes are as important as the positive ones. Step 9. Embellish your color palette and brush strokes, adding background textures. This is where you play. Don't be too concerned with messing up or ruining your picture. I'm using varied opacities in my brushes so as not to make too drastic changes, but enough to see the strokes and keep a few hard edges. I usually work with brush opacities ranging from 5% to 35%, depending what I'm working on, but that's just personal preference. Did you hear about the guy that took a spaceship to Mars? He got out and met a 20-foot, sexy, blonde bombshell. He said, "Take me to your ladder. I'll meet your leader later." Even though I've got the yellow sunlight and moon reflection backlighting the craft, I'm still conscious to try and keep my highlights mostly cool and shadows warm with these dark reds. I'll enhance that more in the last and final step as I'm finishing up. Step 10. Add finishing touches, clean up details, and adjust levels, vibrance, and saturation. This is where you bring the piece together with final touch-ups and adjustments. As you can see, I'm still playing around, swiping my brush here and there, but this stage could go on forever. Once your picture lives up to your satisfaction, you can make a few color and value adjustments as needed. That can be done digitally. I'm going to add a warm photo filter, adjust the levels to bring up the whitest whites and darkest darks a few notches, and I'll also raise the vibrance and saturation levels to make it a little punchier. A lot of people prefer curves to work out the values, and that works great as well. I'm just partial to levels. So that's one way to draw a spaceship, and I'm sure it won't be our last. Be sure to like and subscribe if you find these videos helpful or entertaining. That way we can keep making them. Thanks guys. Take care.
Thank you.